Welcome back to Kryptolytix, giving you a fresh take on crypto analytics. Today, we're going to look at a long-term Bitcoin chart and use it to help us get back into the market if we've been sidelined and waiting for the right signal to get back in. So let's get straight into it. Please remember to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to get updates on this long-term macro chart as we're coming very close to a re-entry, one we've been waiting for quite a while. Let's get straight into the video. So here is the long-term macro chart. So in today's video, I really just wanted to focus on the pi cycle top and bottom indicators. This is something I've been eagerly anticipating for quite some time. I've even been drawing lines to try and predict roughly when we'll cross. It was looking a little bit like we were going to cross this week, but these two moving averages seem to have split off a little bit and look to probably cross a little bit later in the month. For a couple of weeks, it was looking like we would cross around mid this month, and then all of a sudden they sharply came down briefly to cross this week, but now we've got this little kick out to the side here. So of course the prediction could change week to week as it's always updating, but nevertheless it's looking like we're going to cross very soon. So let's have a quick look back and see where these crosses have been in the past and what it's meant for the price action for Bitcoin after the two moving averages have crossed. Before I do that, just quickly, so you can see the pi cycle bottom indicator is a combination of two moving averages, the 471 and the 150, and they are on the weekly chart. So scrolling back, let's have a quick look and see when this has crossed in the past. I usually have these moving averages hidden, but because I want to see when the cross will potentially happen, I've actually got them shown. But normally I just have it so the flags are up on the chart so it doesn't make a mess with all the moving average lines. So we can see here back in the last cycle in 2018, after this massive capitulation, which, you know, is not too dissimilar to what we just had recently. This kind of looks the same to me. Also, the risk index very much looks the same to me, where it's come down to hit this line here and then basically has kind of tracked sideways a bit. If we scroll back, we can see that we're pretty much doing the same thing, right? So have a look here, went sideways, came down. There's a trend line on here that I've got connecting the last few times we've come down to this risk index, because it seems to come up a little bit as we go. We haven't quite touched the line yet, so it means we could probably still come down a little more. But let's just focus on this pi cycle bottom indicator, how it's crossed, when it's crossed, and what has happened after. So have a look here. You can see that the pi cycle bottom crossed basically right here on this candle, with this big candle to the downside, where basically then we immediately recovered. Now the pi cycle bottom preceded the accumulation zone for Bitcoin. So really we can see here that we came down from here, hit this level, bounced back up, and then basically came down, didn't quite get as low, and then entered an accumulation cycle or range before we started to head back up. This is kind of what I'm banking on happening again. So the reason why I'm looking for this pi cycle bottom indicator cross is because I feel like that will be the beginning of the accumulation zone, which is when I will start to DCA back into the market from BTC that I sold quite a bit further up. Now let's have a quick look and see some other times where this has happened and what has happened to the price when this cross has occurred. We have another instance of it here with a classic capitulation candle to the downside, where we basically trended sideways, came down, bounced back up, and then entered an accumulation range. Now this accumulation range, unlike the last one, actually went for a lot longer. This one actually ended up going for about a year, about 280 days, which is quite a while, because what happened was it started to try and reclaim some of these levels. Just here, just these on this wick here, basically started to come back here to try and retest and get back above these levels, but it was rejected and then came back down basically to basically just range, as Bitcoin likes to do, just between here essentially and down below, down here, just bouncing back and forth until it was basically kind of ready to start to head back up again. One thing to note about this particular cycle is that the pi cycle bottom indicator actually was on this cross just here. So you could see it crossed actually on this candle, which was an indecision candle, looked like a doji to me. Let's have a quick look and hide the flag just so we can see exactly what candle it crossed on. Yep, right here. So let's just get rid of this from the chart. So we actually had what looks a little bit like an inverted hammer here, which is generally a pretty bullish candle, but it did continue on to the downside regardless of that. And this is on the weekly, just remember, so this is a whole week worth of price action essentially. So during this sideways range, we did actually come back down and get further down below than this wick here. So it just touched on it essentially, almost forming a double bottom, I guess. So there's a good chance that this kind of thing could play out in a very similar way, where we basically come down, the flag is printed on the chart, so like that essentially, and then we go sideways, track sideways essentially, and then maybe come back down to the same low or a little bit lower, maybe shaking the market out, and then start to recover essentially. So you can see like basically that was where everything started coming back up very, very slowly to then enter the next massive phase up to hit the next pi cycle top. And pi cycle top has been pretty good at finding the tops in the market as well. So that's why I give a fair bit of confidence to the pi cycle bottom as well. And as you can see, we had across here, sideways accumulation, and then the price went up. We had across here, sideways accumulation, and then the price went up. So what I am waiting for this is I'm waiting for that cross, because that will be the accumulation range where we might just track sideways throughout this range here in this accumulation band that I have on my logarithmic regression bands here, and then basically start to eventually track up. Now, as I mentioned, because it has happened before, we might end up being stuck down here for about a year. So if we get the same amount of time after the cross, then we'll be looking at basically sometime early next year where we start actually recovering, which is quite a long time to be waiting. But that doesn't take away from the fact that this range will still be an amazing accumulation range, especially if you sold a whole bunch at the last pi cycle top, which happened here. Personally, I took a lot of profit around this area here, because the last time I was buying was around this range here, basically after we recovered from the pandemic crash. So I figured it would be a good time to take profit next time the pi cycle top was triggered on the chart. I didn't really take much profit on the second peak because we were really low on the undervalued zone. We were also really low on the RSI. In fact, a lot of things, metrics, tools, indicators were not really pointing to us being at a top. So I didn't really consider it as a top, but nevertheless, if you took a bunch of profit on this pullback because you knew we were in a bearish market, and that's where something like this chart would have been very helpful, for example. And this is just a weekly chart for Bitcoin that shows where we are roughly in the cycle using the Bollinger Bands buy and sell flags. Basically, this indicated that as soon as we got to around January, that was when we were basically in the bear market, the initial phase of the bear market. So if you knew to take some profit around here and wait to buy at lower prices, then you would be basically sidelined right now, waiting to get back in, either waiting for this to cross back into the bullish candle chain or waiting for something else. And for me, I'm waiting for the pi cycle bottom to cross, which is when I'll start accumulating again, because I've personally been waiting for quite some time to be buying back into the market. The other thing to consider is the RSI is insanely low right now, lowest it's been in quite some time. So that's another consideration as well. But yeah, just mainly focusing on this chart at the moment, and waiting for this pi cycle bottom cross to print a flag on the chart, and then on candle close, as far as I'm concerned, that's the beginning of the accumulation phase. Now, of course, as we saw before, we could still come down. There's a lot of macro factors that could give that momentum ignition to push prices down lower and lower. But I feel like if we did reach some of these lower valuations, down 13, 14, or anywhere around here, I feel like the recovery would be relatively quick to get us back into this logarithmic regression band, and then begin the accumulation phase, which is where I plan personally on getting back into the market after a very long time of waiting. I was kind of hoping that this would cross this week, so it would be relevant, but what my plan is to release another video when it does cross and go from there, basically. So that's pretty much it for now. I'll be keeping an eye on this chart definitely going forward, because this to me is something that I feel I have quite high conviction in. And of course there are other metrics to look at, but even if you were to start accumulating and buying now, these are pretty amazing prices for Bitcoin. There's no doubt about it. But for me, on the off chance that we just keep going down lower and lower and lower, and the actual accumulation phase isn't at the current price, but actually lower, I'm just sidelining for now until we get that cross, because we might get maybe some sort of small attempt at recovering back and then just dumping straight down to 14K. And maybe we'll accumulate around 14K. We don't really know. So that's why I'm waiting for this cross, so I know when to start accumulating again. There's a pretty good chance that it'll be basically where we are right now anyway, so maybe there's no point in waiting, but I am very patient and I would like to wait. Just so you know, none of this is financial advice. This is for educational and entertainment purposes only. This is just me showing you my chart and explaining why I'm waiting to get back into the market, and I hope you found it helpful. If you did, please remember to give me a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll release another video very soon updating this chart, because I feel we're only a couple of weeks away from a cross, which to me is pretty exciting because I've just been waiting and waiting and waiting to get back in. So keep safe out there, take care, and all the best. This is Kryptolytix signing out. Have a good one.